Today's video is a little more serious, but it's something I've wanted to talk about for a while because I think it's become very, very popular for everyone to hate on the Bethesda RPGs, whether it be Skyrim, Oblivion, even the Fallout titles. When these games were coming out, a lot of people really loved them. That doesn't mean that they are without their faults, but I also think that they've had a lot to offer over the years that's really fun. Skyrim is a game that has a very special place in my heart for several reasons. First off, it was my first Bethesda RPG ever. It was the first game I ever played from them. I had never owned an Xbox 360, a PS3, even a gaming computer before that game. I actually really only had a PlayStation 2 growing up because my family didn't have a lot of money. So I was kind of limited in what games I could play, although I was lucky enough to have one of the best consoles probably ever made in terms of game libraries. The PS2 was certainly a diverse lineup of games that, honestly, I'm still finding stuff today to play I never even heard of. But The Elder Scrolls Skyrim is something very special to me because it's a game that really helped, I would say, save my relationship with my dad. It really helped me become friends with my dad. And I know a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't be friends with your parents type stuff. I do think that there's a place for that conversation when there's parenting where it's not parenting, it's just the parent wants to be their kid's friend. But when it came to my dad and my relationship, it was always a little distant. Like growing up, we were very close. You know, when I was a very young boy, he would stay home and make sure that I was taken care of a lot of days. You know, he would kind of be my babysitter. Like my mom and him had different work schedules. And so a lot of times he was at home during the day helping with me when I was very, very young. But as I got older, I kind of started to drift away from my dad, not because of him, but because of me and not understanding how to get along with him. We had very similar personalities, but we gravitated towards different interests. My dad didn't grow up with games. It's worth mentioning that he was 70-something years old when he passed away in about 2019. So he wasn't really in the gamer generation. He didn't really understand my fascination with them. He used the computer a lot, but he didn't really understand why I loved video games so much, and I think that originally, like a lot of the boomer generation, a lot of that older generation, he thought that they were a waste of time. They had been kind of conditioned to believe that things like watching TV was okay, but playing video games was just a poor use of one's time. It's a very common attitude among that age range, even though it doesn't logically make any sense with their other interests. It's just what they were raised to believe. So growing up, I don't think my dad really understood why I was so fascinated by games, the worlds that they created, the opportunities they had for adventure and fun. It just didn't really register with him. But when I was a freshman in high school, I was diagnosed with a couple of different conditions that were chronic pain disabilities that made it a lot harder for me to do anything. They affected my hands and wrists, and they made it so I couldn't really play video games anymore for a time. Imagine having severe carpal tunnel syndrome 24/7. I didn't have that, but that's the pain level and issues I was dealing with because my actual disability was not diagnosed correctly for years, so I wasn't really able to get medicine. Skyrim was not the first game that my dad and I played together. That would probably go to Spy Hunter 2 on the PlayStation 2. But it is the first time that my dad actually really understood what a huge open world game could be, faults and all. I think the first game we played together after I was diagnosed with my problem was Splinter Cell Conviction, and there might be a video there another day on games like that and Halo that I also played with my father, but I think those would probably go over on my other channel, Degenerate J, because they don't really fit with the RPG theme of this channel. But that said, games like Fallout New Vegas and Elder Scrolls, my dad and I started playing together. And it's the first time that it ever really registered with him how big these worlds could be, how interesting some of the characters could be in them, and how lost someone could get in an open world role-playing game. I remember when I was in college, my dad really started diving into games like Skyrim. Before that, when I was in high school, like I said, we started playing games like Halo, and Splinter Cell together because he felt bad that I couldn't really play them, so he wanted to play them with me. So I would sit with him while he played the game and we'd talk about it. Games like Skyrim, while they are lambasted nowadays for using dated engines or being released over and over again, at the time it came out, it was a very expansive world that not very many people were criticizing. It doesn't mean that it's perfect or doesn't have problems, but it's worth mentioning, and really setting the tone of the fact that Skyrim now is seen as a game that runs on everything from the newest generation of consoles to your grandma's smart fridge screen. But at the time, it wasn't seen that way. It was extremely impressive. So when my dad and I sat down and made our character together, our first character being a high elf, who I actually still have the save file of on his old Xbox 360, I think he was really amazed at just how many opportunities there were to play the game the way you wanted. Now, it's worth noting again that this is a little bit of an illusion because, you progress the game the same way, but it kind of came down to a question of, do you want to be an archer? Do you want to be a sorcerer? Do you want to be a swordsman? Do you want to be a mixture of all three? How do you actually want to tackle each situation? And while the combat is not the deepest thing in the world, it is still engaging and fun, and it really created a bonding experience for the two of us as we would find different places, solve puzzles together, progress the game, and learn the backstory and lore of Tamriel. This was a wide open world that neither of us had really experienced before. I had watched a friend play Skyrim for a couple hours, but I knew very little about it going into it with my dad. And so it was something that as we played, we really bonded over a common interest and began to discover the stories and characters of this world that we had never really seen before. It gave us something to talk about and something to do together that really bridged the decades of age that were separating us. And I think that that's something that's really special about video games, is that it's an interest that someone could partake in whether they're 12 years old playing a Lego game. I mean, hey, I still play them at 29, or whether they're 70 years old, just discovering them for the first time, like my dad was when he started playing games in his mid-60s. And one reason it's so special to me is because it's a memory I have with my dad that will never really go away. My dad passed away a couple years ago, like I said, and it's something I still think about is our time just sitting on the couch playing Skyrim together, talking about the world, talking about the factions, whether it was better to be Stormcloak or to side with the Empire, and what was better. And these are all questions that I thought were very interesting that we talked about. We would find a note in the game and we'd read it and talk about it together. And I think that it shows how special and social gaming experiences can be. Because going into college, I was starting to make some poor decisions. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, I didn't really know who I wanted to be, and I started gravitating more towards things like alcohol, going to parties, and trying to impress girls that were not exactly the kind of person that you should really even care to impress. But I always had a home waiting for me, and at home I always had not only a father, but also a friend who had a common interest with me and wanted to spend time with me. It's something that really grounded me and helped me realize the kind of person I wanted to be, because it made me realize I wanted to be a person like my dad. Somebody who was welcoming, who was willing to help others. My dad was so moral, the guy couldn't even comprehend making evil choices in a video game. He wouldn't do it. And I always thought it was really funny but endearing, how much he cared about people, whether they were fake or not. It sounds silly, but my dad had a very strong moral compass that I think I really started noticing when we were playing these games together that really inspired me to try and be a better man. Now, Skyrim will never be a perfect game, and in fact, I think it says a lot about the game that it has been, like all Bethesda RPGs, really sustained by and elevated by mods. It's certainly a game that I think in modern day is seen as a great canvas for content creators of mods and other content to, enhance but it's something that's really special to me because of these memories around it. It's something that I think is a great time, and it honestly is a game that, yes, while it has a dated engine, does have so many different fun characters, locations, and mechanics to discover, and such an interesting story and world behind it. Sure, the characters might not be the best in the world, and yes, I know the dialogue is pretty clunky, between lines like, "I took an arrow to the knee," or even just repeating NPC dialogue that doesn't really get any better over the years. But it's a game that really helped solidify my friendship with my father, and really helped make me want to be a better person. I know the Bethesda games, like I said, are very popular to criticize nowadays, and I don't think that they should be above criticism, but I do think that these games, like all games, do mean something to a lot of people, and I think it's really important to note how special and how unifying of an experience games like this can really be for people. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I do appreciate you very much. This channel is something that I want to continue uploading on probably once or twice a week. I'm gonna see depending on the editing. It's something that I thought more people from the main channel would be interested in, but I really appreciate those of you who did come over from that, and I appreciate those of you who have subscribed just because you found this channel. It means a lot to me, and it's a channel that I want to grow a separate audience for over time and really try and make more stuff on. This is just kind of something that spoke to me as an idea for a video that I wanted to share with you. So I hope you all have a fantastic day, and as always everyone, stay shway.